Hello, everybody. Hopefully, you guys are able to hear me and see me here. My name is Joe. I'm a programmer here with Pantech Design. On the Adapt team, I'm in charge of programming Adapt jobs on a day-to-day basis. And today, we are doing our Adapt 2.0 technical webinar. And we're just going to get jumped right in here. The first thing that I wanted to discuss a little bit is our webinar protocol. So everybody is going to be automatically muted when they come into the webinar. And the idea with this is we want you guys to sit back and relax. We are recording this webinar for you guys to reference later. And so sit back and relax, and hopefully we'll get you guys some good programming info on this webinar. So we do have some newer Adapt guys on the webinar here, as well as some people that are not even part of our Adapt family yet. And so we do kind of want to start with a background of Adapt and kind of what we've been up to. And I call this who, what, and why. Who? Well, we are Pantech Design, and we are a veteran CSP. We were founded in 2005. Our owner, Troy Morgan, and we specialize in Crestron system design, engineering, and programming services for Crestron dealers, like lots of you guys. We specialize in large-scale residential projects, which is really where Adapt was kind of born out of. We have programmed over 1,000 jobs in our days, as Pantech Design, and we are fully staffed. So we have 5 master-level programmers on staff, as well as a design and engineering team to help with some of these other things that we do. And so what we're doing is, well, we're talking about Adapt. And so what is Adapt? Well, Adapt is the fastest and most efficient way to program a fully featured Crestron system in the world. This sentence, we've packed quite a bit of a mouthful in here, if you will. We already know it's the fastest and most efficient way to program a Crestron system, but I think what's most important here is that it's fully featured, but it's also flexible as well. And that's what our Crestron clients really demand, right? Is Crestron clients are going to demand this kind of flexibility or this customization whenever they want it. And why would I use Adapt? Well, if you're interested in reducing your programming time by about 50 to 75%, then Adapt is for you. And like I said, while still providing that customization for your customers that are going to demand it. Just some numbers about what we've been doing with Adapt. Obviously, we started development back in 2012. We pretty much took one of our master level programmers off of production and had him strictly developing Adapt. And we deployed our first project in October 2014. That was our owner Troy's house, a fairly large system. It took us significantly less time to program with Adapt in the way that we had previously been doing programs. We launched Adapt as a product for other Adapt, or I should say Crestron dealers like yourselves to purchase at CEDIA 2015. And since then, we've brought on board over 100 Adapt dealers, and we have over 850 Adapt deployments out there. So there are over 800 homes in the United States that are running Adapt, and obviously that's just in the last under 3 years or so here that we've been offering Adapt. Okay, so what have we been up to lately? Well, the first thing that we've been up to lately is our Adapt 2.0 release. This is where we've now released our energy automation kind of package, if you will, that works with the Sonnen EcoLinks battery. There have been a couple webinars and a couple other places where we've kind of talked about this. And of course, there's lots more resources. In fact, we're going to talk about some of these resources, how you can learn more about Sonnen. But we will be posting, those types of links and resources in a follow-up email to this. And of course, you're more than welcome to contact us for a demo or more information about energy automation. And instead of talking about energy automation, we already have, like I said, a kind of a webinar and other resources on that. What I'm going to be talking about today is some of this other stuff that's part of Adapt 2.0. The first thing that's part of Adapt 2.0, of course, is our System Manager 2.0. That's kind of our bread and butter, right? And System Manager 2.0 is now in a release state so that you guys can take advantages of all the nice features that we've been able to put in there for you. Part of Adapt 2.0 is also an improvement to our driverless source modules. So now we have over a dozen or so modules that connect with one single signal. We call them driverless because there's no IR driver or anything like that that you have to pull into your program. We also have updated example and starting templates. We're going to be talking about that in the webinar today. Our Adapt Core updates, our device and list expansion up to 100, so we can accommodate for 100 of various devices these days. We'll talk more about that. NVX modules is something that has been asked for a lot, and of course those NVX modules are now part of Adapt 2.0. The next thing I'm going to get into is actually something brand new that we've released and that we're actually releasing during this webinar today, and that's what we're calling Adapt University. Adapt University is going to be your online hub for everything Adapt training related. So whether you're a new dealer and you're coming on board and you got a programmer that needs to start from scratch and get brought up to speed as quickly as possible, there's a series of tutorial videos. You can see it right here in this snapshot. We're going to call it Adapt New Programmer Training. I want to say there's about 9 videos in there, only a couple hours long, and that will take a fresh, never touched Adapt before programmer and bring them up to speed programming systems in no time. This is, of course, also going to then replace our new dealer webinar training. So if you've been brought on as a new dealer in the past, the process you've had to go through is that you sign up for a day with me. I sit in this room for a whole day and teach you everything you need to know about Adapt. That is now gone and being replaced with these on-demand style videos. So of course, if you need a refresher on, say, audio switchers or our NVX modules, you can go specifically to that video and watch that video as many times as you'd like without having to scroll in that 7-hour-long training video that we sent you before. Okay. Part of this is kind of setting ourselves up for the future, of course. So we are going to be providing, various programming tips and tricks, client training videos, Adapt technician training series, simple Windows training series. Lots of other things are going to live on this channel as well, and you will see a lot more content getting added to this channel in the coming days and weeks. Any suggestions for what you guys would like to see? Of course, we'd love to hear that as well. I've already got a list of some videos that I want to make sure that we get out there for you guys. Okay, and so that's Adapt University, and like I said, that is live right now. So if you go tab over to my browser here, you can go search Adapt University in YouTube. Right now, you will get taken directly to our channel, and you see this is where we've got some stuff already on here, including some of our energy automation, Adapt chats and webinars and stuff like that. All right, so that is Adapt University. Next thing I'm going to dive into here is going to be System Manager 2.0. Now, if you're already part of the Adapt family, you already know that System Manager 2 has kind of been in beta for a long time, and so now it is officially released, right? And so part of what you get as part of System Manager 2.0 is it's a lot faster, it's more efficient, and it's easier to use. And we're going to talk about some of these improvements that we've made and it's on a real system here in just a sec. We've introduced features like the processor scan and address book. So kind of like Toolbox discovers all the Crestron devices on your network. Now we can scan and discover that Crestron processor that has your Adapt program on it, and then also store all of those into an address book, maybe so that all your sites are in one address book as far as Adapt is concerned, so that you can access them nice and quickly. Updated Rooms tab, that's what you see right here. This is at least one of my most favorite features about System Manager 2.0 is this Rooms tab. At a glance, I can tell what kind of devices exist in all the various rooms in my system. I know that probably most of the rooms that have an audio zone and a video zone are going to have the same maybe source list or similar configurations. And so at a glance, I can know exactly how I need to kind of copy and paste down my list, which is of course something that we've made even better in System Manager as well as copy and paste. We have helpful inline icons and text like you see here. I'll show you a couple other places we have those things. And then we have this ability to quickly name items. So let's jump over to a real System Manager system here. Let me, first thing I've done is I've actually already connected up to a processor that is running our 26 room example, right? And you can see if you've seen our boot up procedure before, this should look familiar. I just got done booting this up a minute ago. And so the first thing I'm going to do is pull down my Adapt file from my processor. I'll just double click it right here. And right off the out of the gate here, I want to show you that rooms tab like I was talking about, right? So I know, say, if I know that every zone with a TV in it, I'm going to have a similar source list. Well, we've now made this right-click, copy and paste functionality really nice. So I can copy a room and quickly come in here and paste just the source list. And similarly, I know any zones in my system that maybe only are audio only, I should say. I can copy and again paste those rooms throughout System Manager. Another kind of helpful, we talked about these inline text icons are helpful for sources as well. So here again, at a glance, I can look through all my sources and I know where I've landed these various sources in my system. I've told the system that these are where these sources plug in. Obviously, for my audio only sources, I only had those audio destinations. We also have some inline indicators for things like control types, so if you're using IR or not IR, and things like tie lines. So now I can know where my tie lines are located at in my system. Okay. The last thing I want to show you guys real quick in System Manager, one of my favorite features when we're doing larger systems is the ability to quickly name things that are in a list. So let's say I wanted to go through and start to rename some of these rooms, and I had all these rooms in a nice list here that I wanted to go through and rename. I can of course go in and rename my rooms, whatever I may want to name them to, right? And when I want to then move down to the next item in my list, what I can do is I can hit enter to kind of commit that first initial room name change. But then when I hit enter again, notice how I now have this next room selected. So I can instantly go down and start just typing through all of these room names very quickly and easily without having to really lift a finger off of my keyboard at all. So obviously, if you've got lots of even lighting zones or thermostats or rooms in your system, you can very quickly go through and name all of these with our nice entering through, as I call it. Okay. And so that's System Manager 2.0. And of course, man, there's probably a whole webinar I could spend just on System Manager 2.0. There's improvements under the hood as far as communication and transferring programs, all sorts of good stuff built into System Manager 2.0. Okay. Of course, if you want to take advantage of the latest software, we want to make sure you guys know how to get it. And so in order to get the latest and up-to-date software, there's essentially two ways that you want to be familiar with. For now, you want to really focus on this first one, and that is to go to your dealer portal. And on your purchase products page is where you'll see a link for Adapt Suite download. If you go click that link, that will download all of the files that you could ever want as far as Adapt related files. Every now and then we may post small incremental updates, and those you'll likely find on our Adapt forum, forum.pdadapt.com, excuse me. And that's, like I said, if we're posting a small incremental update to perhaps one or two pieces of our Adapt suite, you will find that on our forums. But if you are just looking to totally get up to date, the dealer portal is the way to go on that. Once you have downloaded the Adapt suite from your dealer portal, we have changed just a couple minor things about how we install Adapt. The first thing that you'll want to do is, of course, run the installer. And our installer now will install not only the Adapt related files, but it will also install System Manager. So now instead of running a separate System Manager installer, now you've just got one installer and all the files you need are right there. And of course, after you've installed the Adapt suite, it's really just going to put a folder in your My Documents directory that's going to contain all of the components for your Adapt suite. And of course, one of the first things that you want to do after you've installed your suite is to copy your Adapt modules into your Simple Windows directory, kind of like I've shown here. I just did this on my machine a minute ago, and I actually deleted my Simple Windows modules directory just so that I knew I had fresh Adapt modules there instead. Okay, of course, I've already installed the Adapt suite on my machine, and I've actually loaded up our latest 26-room example, which is going to be our 2.0 version of our 26-room example. And again, we have some new Adapt hopefully new Adapt dealers on the webinar here. So I do want to explain what this 26-room example is. Of course, this example program is designed to model a 100% complete functioning and customized program. This is a program that would very easily find itself into a paying customer's home, if this were a real system. If you were to hook up hardware to this system, that hardware would function exactly like you would expect it to. Part of this 26-stream example is that we've included lots of examples for various devices in our system. So TVs and AVRs, sources, lighting, windows, security, door locks, doorbells, and so many other examples. You'll find lots of them in our 26-stream example. I'm going to show you these in just a sec. You really want to focus on using this program as a reference. We don't recommend starting with the 26-stream example, and I'll recommend how we want you to start your programs here in just a sec. But this is really just for reference or for borrowing, logic from. Say if you want to borrow how we did Sonos, you may borrow just the Sonos module out of our example program and pull that into your program. You don't want to necessarily start with the example program just because there's so much stuff in it. However, you will use the VT Pro projects of this 26-stream example as a starting point for your own projects. So, our VT Pro projects that are associated with our 26-stream example are exactly what you should be using on your own production jobs. So let's flip over and let's take a look at this 26-stream example and get kind of an idea of what we've done in our latest example. The first thing that you will see here is that we've totally reorganized our sources and some of our displays as well. So if we just look at sources, for example, one of the things that you will see is that we've utilized a lot of these driverless source modules, as we're calling them now. And so there's an example for DirecTV, TiVo, Uverse, Comcast, Fios, Apple TV, Roku, Samsung Blu-ray, Sony Blu-ray, Kscape. There's an NSP, Autonomic, Centrac, and Sonos. So these are all modules that you can bring into your program that don't require you pulling in any kind of extra IR driver or anything like that. And in fact, these DirecTV and various cable satellite providers, these are what I like to call one-liners. There's literally one single signal on this module that connects up to the IR slot. As we've used in the past for dynamic IR, that's just where these source modules now hook up to. And so you can see I can, of course, add multiple of these packet transmission signals to this IR slot. And so now any one of these first, 8 sources or so are all getting controlled on this Pro 3's IR slot, all using these one-liner kind of connections here. So really nice and easy to hook up those modules. We've also shown, various ways to control TVs in AVRs. We've shown this before, but we've expanded on this now. So we've shown an example of, probably my favorite AVR to control is a Denon AVR, where now we show you the command TX is right here, and we actually have these strings to control an actual Denon AVR right here in System Manager for you to kind of grab. Along these kind of same lines, when we're talking about command strings, another thing that we've kind of included as part of our Adapt 2.0 release is our Adapt command strings spreadsheet. This is a resource that I've been using and we've been using internally here at Pantech Design for quite some time, kind of building a library or repository of these different command strings that we use to control different devices. Since we all know that, third-party modules, especially bad third-party modules, will bog down your system, we've given you the strings to hopefully avoid needing to use those third-party modules at all, and instead you can use the strings that you can see right here. We've even included some CEC strings that I will talk about right now. So if we look at some of these TVs, you'll notice that the command TX, it goes to a COM port. So here you can see it goes to my COM port right here on a DM RMC. But another place that this command strings go to is our DM out CEC message. Okay, and so this is a nice way to utilize our command strings functionality that's already built into Adapt, and just being clever about where we're connecting this command TX signal. And in here, what we've decided to do is connect it to the DM out CEC message on that DM output. And so now I can start to control TVs through CEC, again, using the command strings that are here in System Manager. Okay. Going back to our example program, a couple other things I wanted to talk quickly about. We've also better organized all of our subsystems, as I call them. So, AV is kind of a given in most of our adapt systems, but one of the things that, we wanted to show lots of examples for were all the rest of these subsystems, like lighting, climate, windows, door locks, doorbells, all these types of things. And so what we've done is we've better organized the examples within here. Here you can see that we've shown 3 examples how to do a D3 implementation, where this is essentially just linking our adapt module to a virtual keypad in my D3 system. Or maybe we've connected to ping, where sure, maybe we wanted to use the ping lighting smart object, but maybe we also want another way to trigger the ping lighting scenes from simple windows. We've shown an example of that. And then, of course, we all understand that there are other lighting manufacturers out there, such as this one that starts with an L here. And of course, we integrate with any lighting system. It does not matter what manufacturer you use for lighting. Adapt is kind of able to integrate with any of them. And so this example here just shows you how you may integrate with a Lutron Phantom keypad module here, where our adapt module is just pushing buttons on this Phantom keypad Lutron module. And of course, we've shown those for the individual lighting zones as well. So we have both a global example and local examples here. We've also shown kind of another example. Maybe you have a smaller lighting or shade system, maybe only a couple rooms. We've actually shown you how you may decide to kind of execute something like that here in Simple Windows, where we can go in and manually just have those shades defined in our Simple Windows program, and using these global scene buttons to kind of emit these various values that you see here. Okay. Thank you for the question in the chat. I see it here. The question is, assuming you wouldn't want to have CEC and serial strings attached at the same time. I guess this is a question that depends on your actual installation, but let's say if you're not using that COM port, there's no reason not to just send strings to it, right? And in fact, that's one of the things I'll talk about in our starting template. One of the things that we've done here is we've attached our command TX to both of those locations. And so if you're only using CEC or you're using a COM port, then you're fine. If you are intending on using maybe CEC for your TV, but the COM port for your AVR or something like that, then yes, you would want to make sure that you're handling those signals appropriately. But right out of the gate, this has no problem, landing one serial signal on 2 different destinations there. Good question. Thank you for the question. Keep them coming. Let's see. I think that's about all I need to talk about on the example program. I guess one other thing I will mention quickly that I've decided to put in here is an example of a Horizon keypad. So we have a Horizon keypad that's defined here in our program. One of the coolest things about Horizon keypads, if you guys have not gotten a chance to play with them, are the various colors and the LED backlight. I think that's a really cool feature that Crestron has kind of built in. And so we've shown a quite advanced example, I would say, of how you may decide to utilize a Horizon keypad in your adapt system. In this case, what we've shown is button 5 is going to be a left and right rocker. That's controlling volume in my keypad room here, or my keypad module. And I think that's a very realistic kind of use case for this keypad as a left-right volume rocker. Let's see what else we have in here. So we've also shown where you're using another left-right rocker to control lighting scenes in your room. And of course, the feedback for, say volume and these lighting scenes can all come back into your Horizon keypad. And depending on how you have the themes and the colors set up, that keypad will react accordingly. But probably I guess the most out of the box thing that I've kind of done here, actually, let me go up to my hardware. And the most out of the box thing that we've decided to do is attach these buttons 1, 2, and 3 to scene recalls. And I've kind of decided to call these scenes good morning, good night, and relax. And we think that these are scenes that every client can kind of relate to, right? every client can relate to this feeling of when I wake up in the morning, I want the same thing to happen, you know, when I push that button every morning. I want my TV to come on. I want my favorite channel preset to be recalled. Maybe I want a lighting scene and I want a shade scene. And I want that every time I go and hit that good morning button. And so in this case, this is an example of how you can take that Horizon keypad button. Maybe it says good morning right there on the button, and that keypad button is going right into our global scenes module and recalling our good morning scene. And then what's most important that we haven't shown before is that if we follow this good morning scene recalling, we've now attached quite a bit of additional logic to this to say recall that lighting scene, recall that windows or shade scene, and then recall my favorite channel preset. And so with a stepper and 3 digitals here, I've now accomplished quite a bit of automation attached to this one good morning button. Okay. So that is our example program. The other thing that we've updated as part of our latest Adapt suite is our Adapt starting template. And this is where you should be starting all of your projects these days. When you have a new project, you say, okay, yep, time to sit down and program this new job. The first thing that you should be doing is opening up this Adapt starting template, okay? And so I'll talk a little bit about what this is. Like I said, we've already started your programs for you, and I'll show you some of the things that we've kind of already given you to save you time when you're getting started on your new jobs. Your Adapt starting template is in your examples folder. What we've included in here is one of each touch panel type and some of the most popular Crestron gear already programmed. I'll talk about this in just a sec. And we've also included organized logic folders ready for you to kind of plop Adapt modules into. And so you don't have to worry about creating your program structure. We've already kind of provided that for you. The most important thing that you do with this starting template as the first thing is to do a save as, okay? And so that's exactly what I'm gonna show you here. I've got my starting template open right here. This is again in my examples folder. You see it right here, Adapt starting template. And so the first thing I would want to do is go in here and do a save as, and I want to get my folder structure for my job set up so that I'm nice and organized. If you remember from training, and if you actually go through our Adapt University, you'll remember that we always recommend that you have a folder for each program slot running on each processor, just to kind of keep yourself organized in your folder structure there. But let's take a look at this starting template. Again, this is where we're starting all of our programs. So the first thing that we've given you is one of each touch panel type already in here and already configured and good to go. Touch panels are, of course, by far the most cumbersome and most, they have the most signals to them. There's about 3,000 signals or so on each touch panel just to get all the functionality that we need. And so what we've done is we've given you one of each touch panel type and connected to its corresponding Adapt module so that you already have something that you can kind of copy and paste from. One of the things I want to show you guys is, let's say you start from our starting template and now you want to add more touch panels to your system. It's very, very easy to do so. The first thing, of course, is to get whatever touch panel hardware definition you want to add to your system. I'm going to add a 1060 here. And this is kind of a two-step copy and paste kind of procedure. The first copy and paste is going to be from my existing 1060. This is why we've given you one of each type, is so that you already have kind of guaranteed the corresponding touch panel type to copy from. And what we can do is we can right click and drag from our existing touch panel onto the old touch panel, or excuse me, onto the new touch panel. We get this option to duplicate device programming. And let's say I'm up to touch panel 7 here. So I'm going to replace 001 with 008. That will copy all my touch panels, extenders, and smart graphics, and all that kind of good stuff, right? And we should see that take place here in just a sec with simple windows. And all that I would need to do to add additional touch panels is just repeat this process over and over again. So you see, here's all my signals and all my extenders there. And so that's kind of step one. Maybe I give this a comment to kind of remind myself the touch panel number I used. And step 2 is going to be to copy the logic folder that I want to copy from. Paste it just at the bottom of my touch panels folder is okay. And this takes a second as well, and we'll click it and we'll do an F9, and we can replace 001 with 008. Okay, and this is kind of step 2 of my procedure. And after this process is done here, I would now have duplicated my touch panel. And of course, I just repeat that process however many times I need and until I'm done. And there's my new touch panel. Okay. So that's the first thing that you'll probably want to do with any system, or that you'll need to know to do with any system with the starting template, is how to kind of get additional touch panels into your system. All right. One of the other things that we've done, that I, as a person that programs adapt systems every day, one of the things that I really enjoy is what we've decided to do with our audio switchers, video switchers, and displays. Let me start with audio switchers. If you look in audio switchers, you see that we've already kind of have in here a adapt audio switcher swamp 8 expander module. What this module is all about is that this is the most complicated, the most complex audio switcher that you could have as far as Crestron hardware goes, right? Of course, you may have your own, custom system that has all this crazy stuff going on, but as far as Crestron distributed audio, a swamp with 8 expanders is probably the largest. And so what we've done is we've hooked up this module to a swamp with 8 expanders here in my system. And so what this means for you as a programmer is that without touching this system at all, without touching this program, you already have a swamp with 8 expanders already defined and good to go without touching a thing. Now that's if you have 8 expanders. Let's say maybe you have a swamp, but you don't have 8 expanders. Maybe you only have 5 expanders. Well, this makes that process easy as well, because now all I need to do, it's another kind of 2-step process. The first step that I'm going to do is I'm going to add my appropriate swamp module, my swamp with 5 expanders, right? That's what my system has, is 5 expanders. So I can pull that module in. And what I can actually do is I can actually right click and copy my 8 expander module onto my 5 expander module, and I can copy all the signals. Now, of course, Simple Windows is going to complain to me a little bit because it's telling me, hey man, you've got a bunch of signals that don't exist on this destination symbol. And of course, I'm okay with that, right? Because it's only talking about signals for expanders 6, 7, and 8. This module is now totally done. This module is happy, it's complete, it's got all the signals I need. And so in fact, I can go ahead and delete my 8 expander module out of my program now, since I actually have 5 expanders. And so that's step 1. Step 2 is just as easy, where I go in here to my hardware and I can just delete expanders 6, 7, and 8. And so now I have a swamp 5 expanders done. Okay, and that took me longer to talk about it than it did to do it, right? Of course, maybe another step I want to take as well, we've also included the corresponding other device that is for swamp with 8 expanders. And so of course I can do something very similar with my swamp 5 expanders audio setup module. Okay, and so just like that, you can program any size swamp system with any number of expanders using our starting template in no time at all. Okay, and so that's what we've done on the audio side. Of course, let's not forget that modules like our AAE or the C2 and amps, or we have a bunch of these modules that auto import. And so even if you're not using a swamp, it is still, of course, very, very easy to program these devices into your system. I guess just to show you real quick, I always like to show people a brand new device so that there's no smoke and mirrors. Let me go ahead and add a C2 and amp 6x100 to my system. I'm going to add a corresponding adapt module. I'm going to give this adapt module init, and let's use switcher number 2 here. And what I can do is right click and drag, of course, onto my 6x100. I get this import option. ASW002 is the prefix I'm going to use, and just like that, my brand new 6x100 is done and kind of programmed. And I think I've timed myself before. This takes me about 30 seconds to program a 6x100. So that's pretty cool, I think. Okay, so that's audio. Video is something else I'm very excited about. For video, what we've done is we've included a DM32x32. First thing that hopefully you may notice about this DM32x32 module, in fact, all of our DM modules, is that these DM modules now auto import. And so if I have a DM chassis, you should see here that this module auto imports onto my DM hardware. So we've made hooking up your DM hardware much, much easier. There's really not a lot to it, right? But one of the other things that we've done with this DM switcher is we've dropped in 32 display modules attached to the 32 outputs of that DM32x32. And when I say hooked up, what I really mean is we've hooked up the command TX and the packet TX signals right here. This kind of gets back to the question before, where this command TX is hooked up to both CEC and to my COM port, and packet TX is of course hooked on to my IR slot of that outputs RMC. And so what this means for me is, again, without touching my program at all, just by simply opening up this starting template, I am already able to control 32 TVs coming out of a DM32, and I can control them in one of three ways. I can control them CEC 232 or using dynamic IR. And with those three options, I venture to say you can control 99.9% of TVs using one of those three mechanisms. And because of how we've laid out our starting template now, of course, you can do that without having to touch your program at all. Now, if you don't have a DM32x32, it works exactly like it works with Swamp. If I go in here, and maybe actually it's a little bit easier than I would say with Swamp. Let's say maybe I only have a DM16x16 or an 8x8, whatever it may be, right? All I need to do is go in here, is replace my DM32x32. I can replace it with, say, let's do a 16x16 here. Simple Windows is going to take care of deleting all the extraneous stuff from my program. It's also going to jumble up my IP IDs, which I kind of hate. You see how they're all jumbled up now. But at the end of the day, what I have is I have a DM16x16 with 16 outputs. And now all I would need to do is I can kind of go through and probably delete, TVs 17 through 32. And now I've got 16 TVs that are good to go, and I can control those TVs in one of three different ways. Okay. So that's what we've done with our starting template there. Yeah, I think that's all I need to talk about. All I need to talk about with the Adapt starting template. Okay. Now, let's see. Actually, I got one more thing I can talk about here. Let's talk about some of these source modules, right? So DirecTV, I think, is far and away our most popular kind of device that we find out there in the wild. So let's focus on this guy. Let's go ahead and pull this in. Of course, we know to give this init, and we know to give this source number 1. And I recommend that you follow a convention, something like this, where you're naming your packet TXs according to the source number, right? And what's nice about this DirecTV module is, of course, as soon as I then go to hook this up to my IR slot, just like this, I'm now done with this DirecTV source as far as Simple Windows is concerned. We still have just a small amount of VT Pro work to do, of course, and a small amount of System Manager work to do. But as far as Simple Windows, we're done in about 10 seconds with this DirecTV module. One of the things I want to show you guys is how to add a bunch of these modules. Let's say maybe I've got 8 DirecTV boxes, just because 8 is how many IR ports I have right here. One of the tricks that you can employ is the paste special. So we all know about the Control C for copy, but what you may not be familiar with is paste special. Paste special is special in my heart because it helps me program lots of stuff really quickly, which is what I'm all about. If you've ever talked to me, you know I'm all about getting stuff done as quickly as possible. And so all I need to do now is do my paste special, which is Control Shift V. And it's going to prompt me, okay, how many copies do you want? Do you want to increment the first numeric component or the last? I'll just hit first for now. And what you'll see with this is it goes through and it pastes me those 7 additional copies of my module. And what you'll see is that it increments not only the source number, but also the IR port. This is why, if you can organize your systems in a nice way so that, say source 1 is on IR port 1 and source 2 is on IR port 2, you can really save yourself some time. Of course, the only thing I need to do from here is add those additional packet TX signals just like that. And so in less than 5 minutes, I've programmed, 8 DirecTV boxes into my system. If I needed to do the same thing with, Apple TVs, I could do that as well. And in fact, maybe because they're Apple TVs, maybe I've even decided to stack them on my IR ports because I kind of just can, right? And so I can start to stack those right here. Okay. And so that's my starting template and some of the overview of kind of the sources. Again, we have all of these source modules over here that you can pick from that all work exactly the same way. Okay, let's get back to my PowerPoint here. I think I only have a couple other things that I wanted to touch on. So again, as a reminder, is that dynamic IR, we kind of already talked about command strings, but dynamic IR is, you know, something that I use exclusively for IR these days. I don't ever program in an IR driver into simple Windows anymore. There's just no reason to. I can make an IR driver from scratch and make it into an adapt dynamic driver quicker than I can pull an adapt driver, or excuse me, that same IR driver into simple Windows and recompile. So there's really no reason to use regular IR anymore. And so just wanted to give a refresher on dynamic IR. And of course, dynamic IR is where you're using System Manager to define the IR drivers for your TVs and AVRs. And we've included a bunch of dynamic drivers in our examples folder. And so if you actually look at our 26-room example, and you can even see in the screenshot here, we're using a Samsung dynamic driver, a Sony dynamic driver, LG dynamic driver, Sunbright, and we've just included a bunch of those in our examples folder, and there's some on the forums as well. There's a full write-up on how this works on our ADAPT forums and in our reference guide if you have questions. And just keep in mind that the ADAPT modules in Simple Windows only care about where that packet TX signal is connected. And we will essentially fire the IR commands on that packet TX signal. And we already talked about command strings, but again, this is how you can control devices over CEC 232 or IP. Bad third-party modules will bog down your system. I can't tell you how many times we see this where a unassuming, you know, AVR module that's in your program is every 10 seconds putting your CPU load to 100% and bogging down your system. We see this all the time, and so to avoid the use of those modules, just pull the command strings out or reference our command string spreadsheet that we've given you now, and you've got all those strings, or at least most of the strings that you'll need right there. Like I said, you can find the strings in our example or on our forum, and the ADAPT modules only now care about where the command TX is connected. Kind of like packet TX, except it's command TX now. It only cares about where that signal is connected. One thing I wanted to kind of point out is, you know, we've been a little, we've had different messaging about how to load ADAPT programs in the past. We've recommended that you use FileZilla to dump your NVRAM file, your ADAPT file, and then also use FileZilla to dump your LPZ and then run the prog load. But we wanted to kind of clear this up for you guys a little bit. The first thing I want to say though is that make sure your program compiles clean. If you're asking us to help troubleshoot your program, it's almost impossible to troubleshoot a program that has, I call it, more than 100 or so errors. I totally understand if this is how you kind of remind yourself to take care of things, right, is by just leaving them unconnected. But please don't send us programs that have thousands of compile warnings and issues, because we pretty much can't troubleshoot that at all. So make sure your programs compile clean. But now what we want you to do is we want you to load with System Manager, okay? So because of all these improvements that we've kind of put into System Manager, you can go to that Tools tab in System Manager, hit the Control Program Transfer button, and browse to wherever your LPZ is and let System Manager transfer your programs for you. System Manager, just to let everybody know, does go through Crestron's recommended procedure of loading programs, where we first transfer that LPZ file and then we run that prog load command. That's exactly what System Manager does. So just let System Manager automate that process for you while you go get a coffee or go get a snack. When you come back from getting your coffee or getting your snack, make sure that you've watched your program boot up in console. There are a lot of, I wouldn't say issues necessarily, but a lot of things that happen during boot up that may clue you in if you start to notice something that's a little off about your system. Oftentimes you may see something in the boot up, procedure that's in console that may clue you in as to something that maybe got configured incorrectly or something like that. Let me make sure we all know where I'm kind of talking about here in System Manager. In System Manager, when you're connected to a processor, you can go to your Tools tab here, go over to Control Program, and this is where you can browse to your control program. We've now also built in this SYN/SIG file so that if you are troubleshooting, you don't have to worry about finding the SIG file on your machine. It will just be on the processor, so you can always debug, even if you don't have the necessary files. Okay. All right, last thing I'm going to talk about today before opening up for Q&A is going to be our Adapt NVX modules. Crestron is obviously steering a lot of people towards NVX these days. Adapt has really supported NVX since, well, really before NVX even came out, we had support for NVX. But now we have modules that are specifically for it to make your lives programming NVX a lot easier. Okay, so the first thing I want to say about NVX and you know, I guess let me say one other thing about NVX in general is please go to the NVX class. NVX is quite complex in terms of, you know, now you need to be a little bit more familiar with the network and some of the networking requirements of an NVX system and how to configure your switches and your router and the NVX boxes themselves. There's quite a bit more to it than, you know, a DM chassis where you just need to fool around with EDID a little bit and then hook up a cable on either side and you're pretty much good to go. NVX, there's a little bit more to it than that. So please go to class before deploying an NVX system. Please even set up NVX in your shop, you know, in your showroom. Make sure that, you know, you have a good switch that you like to use that can handle NVX. And so as far as programming NVX now, the first thing I want to say is that you can, of course, use our NVX modules with or without an XIO director. If you are using a XIO director, notice that these Adapt modules that you see here have that red icon, which means that they can auto import onto that NVX director and you're done. You've programmed, you know, your video switch in simple windows. If you're not using a director, I totally understand. A director can sometimes just add that extra kind of cost barrier, and so I totally understand not using a director. There's two different ways you can do this. The first way is essentially using the subscribed streams functionality that's built right into each NVX box. Essentially, you're going to treat each NVX decoder as if it's a separate video switcher output. You know, the whole idea with an NVX system is we're treating it as a virtual switcher, right? We're treating it as a matrix, you know, probably an unbalanced kind of matrix system, but it does still represent a matrix, a virtual matrix. And so each decoder is going to represent a video switcher output as far as your Adapt module. And then the second way to do it is if you don't want to use subscribed streams, I think actually the easiest way to program NVX is to use this second method here, and that is to use these stream location signals. Essentially, you're going to plug in these stream feedbacks from your NVX encoder so that we know the URL that your encoder is streaming out to. And then we're going to feed those URLs, the appropriate URLs, to the decoder stream location to essentially say, hey, Mr. Decoder, go decode this stream now. This is the URL that I want you to decode. And so I'm going to show you guys an example of this. And actually, this is going to be pretty special, and you guys are going to kind of get to learn with me on the fly here. What I'm going to create here for us all today is our NVX example program. And so let me show you a couple things about this example program so far. Is what I've done is I've added a DMXIO director right here. It's director 80. And so I'm going to show you that I can pull in any one of these NVX modules into my program. I'm going to give this a init, and this is switcher number 001 with 32 inputs. And again, like I kind of mentioned, this module does auto import onto any one of the directors. So I can auto import right there. I'll call it VSW001. Oops, I don't like caps. And there we go. All that's happened is that the video analogs from my video switcher module have landed on my XIO director. And again, a domain is what it would be called inside your director. A domain you can think of as a virtual DM chassis, if you will, a virtual matrix switcher. And so again, at that point, if I am using a director, I'm done as far as our Adapt video switcher module. Now, if I'm not using a director, like I said, there's a couple different ways to do this. The first way is to use the let's see, I want to say it's here under the XIO routing is where you get the analog for video out. And the F1 documentation is pretty good on this. If you open this up, you will see that the video out here, it even says selects the stream from the list of subscribed streams. And so again, as a reminder, what this requires you to do is to go into each decoder and tell it, hey, when this analog gets set to a value of 1, which encoder stream should I be pulling down, right? And you essentially set up that subscribe stream list on your decoder so that this analog essentially is able to access any one of those URLs. It's essentially a number to URL mapping, if you will, that you do on each decoder, and then we select the stream with this analog here. And so if this was, say, decoder 1, this would instead just be, oops, right here, back here. That would be video out 1. This would say, this would be maybe decoder number 1. Maybe I would call this RX1, where decoder 1 is treated as output 1 in my virtual system. And of course, I can go down here and maybe RX2 would be output 2 on my virtual kind of switcher, so to speak. And so this is certainly one way to program your NVX systems, is to treat each one of these as a subscribe stream list and manipulate this analog here. Now the second way that you can do this, and this is all using the same NVX module. So no matter what method you decide to go with, you're always using the same NVX module. And instead of using the video routes for this kind of method 2, which like I said, I think is the easiest method, we're instead going to use these stream locations. So now let's skip down here a little bit. Maybe I'm going to cancel these out real quick. Let's say this is TX1, this will be TX2, and I'm going to have RX1 and RX2. And so consider this a 2x2 matrix system. So let me kind of define my signals here. Actually, I'll do it like this. I'm going to be clever about my F9 here. Okay, and so now I've got 2 stream locations that are going to come in from my encoders. Those can get landed right here. Let me free up some screen real estate here. So you see my stream location feedback is right here. And so I just land TX1 stream feedback right there, and TX2 stream feedback right here. Oops, right there. So now my system has the URLs that my encoders are streaming out to. And now what I need to do is hook up where my decoders should be streaming from. It's on my main hardware definition here. You can see it's the stream location signal right here. And of course, I'm doing this a little bit manual, right? I'm double clicking on the hardware, I'm pasting in here. But of course, you can also use the duplicate device programming functionality to quickly kind of go through this. But this would be RX2 stream location. And what's cool about this method is, like I said, you don't have to go through and set up your subscribe streams at all. Now you're just taking the true feedback URLs where your encoders are streaming to, and you're feeding those directly into your receivers. This is also really nice when you think about adding devices to your system. If you are using subscribed streams and you add a device to your system, you add a source to your system, let's say, now you have to go to each decoder and add that subscribed stream as the last one in the list. So if you've got a 30 by 30 matrix NVX system and you add that 31st source, you've got to go touch 30 decoders to add that 31st stream to each of those decoder subscribed streams. With this method, all I do is I just come in here and I add that 31st stream location here, and my system is automatically going to take that URL and feed it to my decoders where appropriate. Okay, and so this is this NVX example. I'm going to pretty this up a little bit, but I did want to be able to send this out and share this with you guys here shortly. So look for that in the coming days here. I do see one question in the chat, but I just kind of want to let everybody know that is about all that I have to talk about today. Let me get Oh yes, so okay, thank you. One question that just came through in the chat is upgrading an old system to a older adapt system up to a 2.0 system. That's a great question. Thank you for reminding me about that. So the biggest thing about Adapt 2.0 that we've changed anyway is our touch panels. The touch panels have undergone the largest change. And so if you have an older system, unless you absolutely need something that we've introduced as far as a latest feature or something like that, the upgrade process for touch panels can be a little bit tedious, and we don't necessarily recommend it because it's error prone. So like I said, we kind of follow a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of approach here. Any one of the other modules, however, you can feel free to upgrade from. So let's say if we can pretend for just a minute, I'm going to pretend that this display module here is maybe an Adapt 1.0 module, right? Adapt Display 1.0. Oftentimes what you can do is you can bring in your 2.0 module and just straight up copy from the old module onto the new module using this copy all signals and parameters. That will work for most of the modules that are out there. Most of the modules, most of our adapt modules that we have upgraded are under the hood kind of improvements. And so the actual Simple Windows wrapper, what you see here in Simple Windows, has not necessarily changed, but there has been some changes under the hood. And so this kind of copy all signals and parameters is sufficient to upgrade those modules, so to speak. Another thing I want to say, and I will actually write this down because this is important, is you should always be using the latest adapt core. Okay. So you can always, always, always use the latest adapt core with any age adapt system. Okay, so even if I have an adapt system that was deployed 3 years ago, I still, when I'm upgrading that system or when I'm doing something to that system, I can always use the latest adapt core with, this should say any age adapt, excuse me. And the most important part about this is that the adapt core typically lives inside your either your Simple Windows directory, inside your user S plus is where your adapt core lives. But if you're working out of your project directory, there could also be an adapt core in your project directory. And so you do want to make sure that you're paying attention to where your core is located and that you're using the latest core with any older adapt programs. Now that does not work the other way around, right? You cannot use updated adapt modules with an older core. That does not work, but you can use any adapt module with the latest adapt core. If you're doing any more, upgrading than that, I will be posting a more in-depth kind of upgrade video on our Adapt University page. I'll actually have a old program up on one side and upgrade it to a new program on the other side, and you'll see exactly what that looks like. But by and large, like I said, unless there's some specific functionality that you are explicitly looking for, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The biggest fix to an older system will always be the adapt core, and that is always a safe update. Okay, so let's see, let me get my slide back up so everybody knows to answer or ask some questions here. So another question I see in the chat here is with NVX and the XIO director, can you use method number 2 with the stream strings? Well, if you're using a director, there would really be no point in using the stream strings, at least not one that I can think about right now. If you are using a director, you're going to have all your traffic going through the director anyway, including your control traffic and your routing traffic, and so you may as well just use the auto-imported adapt module and use that functionality there. Okay, well guys, that is all I have for now. I appreciate your attention during the webinar today. Hopefully you guys got some kind of insight as to how the latest example programs and starting templates can kind of help you out. Other kind of tips and tricks maybe about NVX. Don't forget about Adapt University. You guys will all be receiving an email to link up to Adapt University. Even if you guys have been with Adapt for a long time, or if you've never used Adapt before, definitely go check out Adapt University. The new training on there is all using the latest 2.0 modules and all of our latest stuff. And so there's no such thing as an outdated training anymore right now. And so if you're looking for a refresher, or maybe you've been away from Adapt for some time, definitely go check out those training videos and they will get you up to speed. Yeah, guys, it doesn't look like I got much else coming in. If you guys do have any additional questions, let me write this one down as well. Feel free to email us at adapt@pantechdesign.com. We have the entire team that is monitoring this email kind of at all times. So this is definitely the easiest way to get any questions or kind of concerns that you have answered. With that, I will go ahead and sign off. I appreciate your attention, and let us know what we can do to help you get more Adapt systems out there. If you guys have any questions, shoot us an email here, and we'll make sure to get you guys taken care of. Appreciate all of you, and keep adapting. Thank you. Appreciate it.